It's approaching 1 year since I began uploading on this channel, and I just wanted to briefly thank everyone who's been supporting it so far, especially recently. I really do appreciate it. Lately, I've done a lot of reflecting on my artistic development over the past year. And what I've begun to notice is that I've really come quite a long way in my abilities over this time span. But how? I don't recall having noticed this amount of growth in my art before, which is really interesting considering that I previously felt that my skill level has been mostly stagnant for a while. And as a result, I've decided to look into what I was doing more of that contributed to my growth and share those findings with other people. So, if you're trying to get better at art, which I would assume is most of you watching this video, then I shall reveal to you my secret methods to getting better in a short amount of time. And in case you're wondering how long it will really take to see progress, I would say that using these 5 tips, you will see growth in your art within a month guarantee. And yeah, with that being said, these are the 5 things that helped me improve my art. This first point sounds like a no-brainer, but I still think it deserves to be addressed. Before I noticed significant improvement in my art, I would be a bit dismissive of the advice to draw every day, as I thought, well, obviously, the best way to get better at any skill is to do it often. But it wasn't until I really started incorporating art into my routine did I reap the rewards of drawing or painting more frequently. It's best to try to make art a habit if you really want to begin to see notable improvement, as you will get better through consistency. Doing it every now and then, unfortunately, won't be enough to see lots of progress. In fact, you might just see the opposite if you do it too sparingly. I guess the next question is, how do you make art a habit? I'm sure there are many ways to do this, but what worked for me personally was discovering new art. I suppose that exposing myself to more artists and new styles and techniques kept art on my mind for longer, and that would lead to me wanting to draw more. But everyone's tendencies are different, and the more you make a conscious effort to either create or observe art, you're bound to eventually make it a habit in your own way. Some days, however, you might not be able to get any drawing done. In those instances, you should still remember to at least observe things in your surroundings, as observational skill will directly translate to your growth. For example, simply taking a few minutes throughout the day to observe how light and form work in life when you don't actually have time to draw can still help deepen your understanding. I know that on some days I don't get to draw. I'll at least take some time to look at some artwork so I don't grow too distant from it. Even if on some days you don't do anything but, say, scroll Pinterest and curate reference boards, that's still better than nothing. So, my advice is just to remember that drawing as often as you are able to will, of course, yield more results than drawing whenever you feel like it. This next tip sort of goes along with the previous one. To get better at drawing, of course, you'll need to draw a lot. However, it is possible for you to draw a lot and still not improve much. This is because with the time you do have to draw, it's important that you spend it wisely. And what do I mean by this? Well, there was one time I was talking to this person about practicing art, and he mentioned that there was this thing he had never drawn before that he wanted to get better at drawing. It might have been anatomy or something, and he told me out of frustration, I've been drawing this thing all day from about 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and I even filled my sketchbook with it, but I'm still not seeing progress. This is what I would consider to be an unwise use of your time. This artist's drive and effort to improve is admirable, but it wasn't really the best way to go about improving. What I told him is, imagine you start working out for the first time and you work out from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. You're not going to see much immediate progress. You're just going to be exhausted. And drawing is no different. It's unrealistic to expect progress that quickly. Simply put, shorter sessions of focused, quality practice over a long period of time will always yield more results than spending a whole day in a longer, unfocused drawing session. Furthermore, a person's energy and focus generally begin to taper off about 4 hours into a task anyway, so it's really not worth spending any more time than this a day on practicing, since the quality of your practice will really just diminish past this point. So with all this, how do you really spend your time wisely? Well, it comes down to not only what you do, but also how you think while you draw. Are you consciously observing the strokes you make, analyzing your subject, and being aware of your decision-making process, or are you idly doodling? Because idly doodling can be fun, and it has its place, but it won't take you very far in terms of seeing significant growth in your art. This was a key thing I noticed that I was doing differently over the past year, has definitely played a role in my improvement. So, use your time spent practicing wisely by not drawing aimlessly, by being deliberate about what you plan to accomplish in that time, and by being observant of how you approach your drawing process. Something I've realized is that it's important not to be rigid or forceful in the creative process. And what I mean by this is that you shouldn't try to force your art to be a certain way, whether it be through means of constant tweaking, erasing, or adjusting your drawing in response to things not really looking the way you wanted. Instead of reacting this way in this scenario, you have to work with the drawing. You can't always be in control of every aspect of the piece you're working on. And I'd say recognizing this is crucial to improvement. One thing you might not be aware of is the fact that your art can communicate with you, and it can tell you what it needs. You shouldn't force it to be something. You just need to learn how to listen to it. And this might all sound really abstract, but there's a way to know when your art is trying to speak to you. That moment you feel resistance while trying to get a drawing to look the way you want. That feeling of resistance is your art's attempt to get your attention and tell you that what you're trying to do is not what it wants. Once I was able to let go of the urge to overcorrect a piece I'm working on or try to get something that's turning out badly to work, I really started to notice that I was able to create with more ease and less frustration. When it comes to drawing, it seems that trying too hard to make things go your way is a recipe for disaster. Learning to relax and adopting a whatever happens mindset is, I'd say, another key point in improving overall, because it fosters a healthier relationship with creating art. You must realize that although you might have a vision for how you'd like your artwork to turn out, it's rare that it ever actually goes that way. So by listening to your drawing, while you might end up with a different result than you initially planned for, it will certainly be a better result than having forced the art into becoming what you wanted. One thing I began doing that I can really thank for a decent portion of my growth is studying the works of artists I admire. I say this because doing studies of artists I like allowed me to see how they do the things I wish I could do and break down their work and take what I learn from doing that and apply it to my own art. Each time you study an artist, you're basically stealing a little bit of their skill for yourself. And you can decide who to study based on traits you see in their work that you would like to incorporate into your own. For example, if you're struggling with drawing faces, study how an artist you like draws faces. You're not sure how to draw expressive poses, study an artist who's really good at doing that very thing. Basically, the idea behind this is that the artist you choose to study has probably already solved the problems you're trying to solve on your own. So my advice is really just to learn from their art or copy their homework, so to speak. Using art you like as reference can really take a lot of guesswork out of the process, and from my experience, really levels up your art a ton. Just make sure that when you do this, you're not unknowingly copying the mistakes the artists you decide to learn from might be making in their art. And because of this, unfortunately, you can't only study from other artists. It's still important that you study from life on your own and make your own observations about what you're drawing, because this allows you to have a better idea of what the artist you decide to study eventually is sourcing their knowledge from, if that makes any sense. And, for example, such and such artist might be really good at drawing hands. Instead of exclusively studying their drawings of hands, first make a few attempts at drawing hands from life, so that when you're ready to study the way this artist draws hands, you have an idea of how they might be simplifying or constructing them, and how their way of drawing hands differs from real life. Because, to be honest, it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out how to make these conclusions on your own. So, to summarize, what I recommend to you is to study a subject you'd like to get better at, first from life or photographs, then from an artist you'd like to learn from. Lastly, the most important tip is to stop learning things and doing nothing about it. This is basically the call to action of this video. Stop learning for the sake of learning. Instead, learn and then go apply what you learn. Or better yet, actively seek out how to do the things you don't quite understand yet. I'd argue this is the hardest thing to do of the 5 tips so far, since there's usually a lot of mental resistance that comes up when you're not exactly feeling motivated to do anything at a given moment. I tend to watch a lot of educational or instructional art content, and I realize that in doing so, I sort of trick myself into believing that I'm actually improving just by sitting here and watching videos. Yes, in a way, by watching or reading informative content, you are gaining more knowledge on a certain subject, but that knowledge doesn't mean anything if you don't apply it or start practicing what you learn. Just remember that learning and then applying what you learn will always benefit you more than just learning for the sake of learning and not doing anything with the information. Also, don't dismiss information because you think you might already know it. Don't be afraid to expose gaps in your understanding of something and revisit topics you think you already know. This ensures that you're well-rounded in your knowledge of a particular subject and also reminds you that you might not understand something as well as you think you do. So, yeah, I said a lot of things in this video, so I hope you took notes or something. The point of this video is really just to provide my personal best practices or things I've discovered or started practicing that caused me to notice a huge amount of growth in a short amount of time. And once again, I guarantee you these tips work once you begin doing them regularly. So I hope someone out there is willing to give them a try. The last thing I want to say is that if you feel that you're not improving or that you don't really see yourself getting any better, just remember that as long as you simply know that creating art is something you enjoy, and as long as you continue to feel compelled to create, there's no need to even think about your current skill level, because you will inevitably improve. So, it's okay. Don't worry. So, yeah. I think that's about it. Thanks for listening, if you did. I really hope this helps. And if you think it was helpful, it'd be nice if you maybe subscribed. I mean, only if you want to, that is. I appreciate it. Oh, and once again, thank you all for the support recently. It means a lot. If anyone has any ideas on what topics they'd like to hear me talk about, please let me know in the comments. I'm trying to brainstorm some new things to discuss in future videos. So, with that being said, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.